New York City, by the way, not the only city slashing police budgets as this crime and violence is exploding. In Los Angeles, for example, they've been battling dangerous gang-related crime for decades. Now, city leaders there are vowing to defund the police by over $100 million. They also want to get rid of the Special Victims Crime Bureau. And by the way, get this, they want to replace the LAPD first responders with, quote, community responders during certain 911 calls. I don't even know what that means. Now, LA's unified police chief, he is resigning, just like we had a lot of resignations in Minneapolis and New York City and elsewhere. His district slashed the department budget, and the Commonwealth of Virginia, look at this, state Democrats, they're now actually trying to reduce the penalties if you assault the police. Wow. Never thought I'd ever report that on this show. And in Chicago, the horrible violence there, it just continues. Just last night, think about this. A 3-year-old little girl was shot in the neighborhood of West Englewood. We've been reporting on this for years. They are America's children, the equivalent, living in the equivalent of a war zone. The children are America's national treasure. I keep saying this. So what can this country do to protect every child and restore order? Joining us now is, with reaction, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, I never thought I'd be reporting things like this in my life. I can't believe we're even having this discussion. Now, there was universal agreement on George Floyd. That never can happen again. The universal agreement, I do martial arts on chokeholds and giving police other non-lethal alternatives. I'm in favor of all of that, improving. That actually takes more money, not less. Training takes more money and more of a commitment, not less. But I don't see any good coming out of any of these movements. I just see basically a get-out-of-jail-free card like the no-bail zone, which is all of New York State, thanks to Governor Cuomo.
Well, unfortunately, the Democrats have released the crazies in their party, and they are going nuts. The violence we're seeing, the rioting we're seeing. You'll remember a couple of weeks ago when Chris Cuomo on CNN asked on air, said, where does it say that protesting has to be peaceful? And more than a few people took some joy in pointing out, well, you don't have to look any further than the First Amendment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, where it protects the right of the people to peaceably assemble. And peaceably is right there in the Constitution. And you and I and everyone, we all have a right to speak, to stand up and say whatever your views are, whether you're right or wrong, you have a right to speak. But what you don't have a right to do is commit violence. You don't have a right to assault people. You don't have a right to burn shops to the ground. You don't have a right to firebomb churches or police cars. You don't have a right to murder police officers or to murder teenage boys, as happened in Seattle. And we are seeing violent rioters. Antifa is behind much of it, and they are domestic terrorists. And we need law enforcement to stand together to stop this terrorism, to enforce the rule of law and to protect American citizens. It's
the fundamental role of government, Senator. This is not hard. I know you went to Harvard. You don't need to go to Harvard Law and be one of Professor Dershowitz's best students. He said that himself. I look at this and I see every 2 and 4 years I always talk about the playbook of the Democratic Party. Republicans are racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, misogynist. They want dirty air, water. They want to kill children, and they want to throw Granny over a cliff. Okay. All of the cities with the worst crime statistics, the most violence, the worst schools, they seem to be these cities that have been run for decades by liberal Democrats. Is this a preview of coming attractions? Is this part of the national debate as we now are 125 days away from a presidential election?
Well, the Democratic Party is afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome. They hate the president so much that they're allowing the crazies. Imagine if 30 days ago, Sean, I'd come on your show and I would have said, the Democrats are going to come out for abolishing the police. You'd have said, look, Ted, that's a little much. Let's not get crazy about it. And that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, NYPD cutting $1 billion from their police department, and AOC says it's not enough. That is crazy. And the consequence of their attacking, demonizing, defunding the police, the consequence will be a lot more black lives will be lost and a lot more white lives and Hispanic lives. You pull the police back, and those, especially those who live in low-income neighborhoods, are going to find themselves the victims of much more violent crime. And this is wrong. I'll tell you, I stand with the NYPD. I stand with the men and women of law enforcement across this country. And I got to say, you know, I've talked to a lot of cops in the last several weeks, and they're down, they're demoralized. You're seeing senior officers leaving the force. Young people, what 19-year-old in his right mind would say, I'm going to go be a cop? And you think that's good for America if people are scared to be a police officer and keep us safe? What the far left is doing, they hate America. This is not about social justice. This is not about equality. Every one of us agrees that everyone's rights should be protected regardless of race. That's what the Constitution and Bill of Rights do. But you look at these vandals that are tearing monuments down. They're trying to tear down George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. That ain't about the Confederacy. Last I checked, George Washington wasn't part of the Civil War. They hate America. Yep. And we need leaders, Sean, to stand up and defend America unapologetically as the greatest nation in the history of the world,
Senator,
dedicated to equal justice.
I was so critical of the 1%, but I always went out of my way to remind people the 99% in the FBI and in our intelligence community, the good people.
Yes.
The 99% of police that protect and serve and put their lives on the line. The 9/11 cops, the cops that were walked across an open baseball field sitting ducks to protect Congressman Scalise and others. They risked their lives and they knew it. Senator, thank you.